just a quick recap. We're discussing the city of Telos. This is a Lemurian subterranean city that was built 12,000 years ago as the result, or from the result, of Atlantis and Lemuria sinking, and during the Atlantean-Lemurian Wars, which we then made subterranean cities. Telos is underneath Mount Shasta, and it's the city that I'm from. This tape will discuss the culture of Telos. Again, a recap. The city is built on 5 different levels, the top level being the main level of the city itself, the second level down, the level of manufacturing and where many classes take place, the third level being the hydroponic gardens, the fourth level being part hydroponic gardens, part manufacturing, and the nature level, and the very bottom level as being the nature level where many, many species of animals and plants exist. Many people have asked, how on earth can you live under the earth? Number one, what kind of light do you have? Or do you have light? Or are you mole people? Yes, we do have light. There is a process that a stone with a high crystalline content is fused with an electromagnetic force of energy. This infusion of energy, in essence, causes the crystalline matrix of the stone to create a polarity that allows the stone to pull in the even invisible rays and readmit them as visible light. And in essence, it becomes a small sun. Our main lighting structure throughout the city, as with the other subterranean cities, is produced by these stones. The light they produce is a full spectrum lighting, admitting all rays. In essence, this energy infusion process then makes the stone become a small sun. And the sun will burn for about 500,000 years before the crystalline matrix breaks down and the stone becomes no longer capable of functioning in this manner. So thus we have lights that will burn for many, many hundreds of thousands of years still. Within this structure, we have created a small ecosystem. In other words, we get our air by plants. We produce carbon monoxide, or we and the animals, and the plants take in the carbon monoxide and create the oxygen for us. So in essence, it's a small ecosystem just as it works on the surface. We also have some vents that go to the surface and brings in the air. We also have water in some areas moving at high speeds. This creates a circulation of the air, freshening it, plus it creates many negative ions. So in essence, it is a total ecosystem very much like the one that functions on the surface. As a matter of fact, it has become so effective that more and more do we not depend on the air vents. As a matter of fact, as polluted as the air is somewhat becoming, the air vents, I said, are not a plus. The government of Telos is constructed on the format of a council of 12. These 12 beings, for the foremost, are ascended masters. They are beings whom have proved themselves of being in high wisdom and being able to hold their head cool during any sort of incident. We always have within our council 6 men and 6 women, so that the council also always remains balanced, that both flames, the male flame and the female flame, are equally represented. From the major council of the 12, it goes down to smaller councils throughout the city, also operating on the level of 12. Individual areas bring in their problems to the local council, and if the local council cannot deliberate a solution that is acceptable to all concerned, they then bring it to the larger councils, and then finally to the original council of 12. For individual problems, these do not come before the council. Instead, these come before what we call arbitrators. Arbitrators are usually priests or priestesses with very much an understanding of the human psyche and are also capable of looking into the akashas. These arbitrators will listen to both sides of a story, if it is, for instance, a dispute civil, and will then make a decision based on what they have heard and what they have read at the akashas on both sides. We have immediately decided that since this method works, once an arbitrator makes a decision, understanding that they will make it from the highest level, being priests and priestesses, they will not be caught into a personalization, either for or against either side. So we have decided that we will accept their decision, whatever it is, and incidences stop there. And we have also found, rather than arguing with each other, should a small incident come up, we immediately go to arbitrators, understanding that an argument can more often than not make it worse than anything else. Heading the Council of 12, the official title is Council of 12 plus 1. The 1 is actually two beings themselves, which is the Ra and Rana Mu, which are the king and queen of Telos. Ra and Rana signifies that they are high Melchizedek priests and priestess to start with. They are also usually twin flames, and it is a hereditary position. The Ra and Rana Mu lineage is unbroken for over 30,000 years as it stands right now. When the next Ra and Rana Mu are being chosen, they do not automatically go to the oldest son or daughter, but the Ra and Rana Mu decide which of their children or grandchildren are the most capable of carrying it off. That being is then instructed that sooner or later they will have to go through full temple training and become a full Melchizedek priest or priestess. In the arrangement as it is, when the Council of 12 makes a decision, the Ra and Rana Mu can back it up, or they can ask for a change. And one more voice comes into this government process, and that's the temple. The temple is recognized as the final word on any decision, because in many ways this is, as are the other subterranean cities, a temple society. The temple, even though most of the time will not interfere with civic government, as I said, they can make final decisions through the high priest and high priestess. The temple is run by the Melchizedek. The Melchizedek is a cosmic priesthood. Everywhere in the universe, the Melchizedek exists. It is all those whom are bringing the light plans from the highest realms down to the other realms. A Melchizedek priest or priestess, by their very prove that they will always set light, or they will always set the good of the many among their above their personal good, which has also been proving time and time again as to why the temple can make the last decision, because they will always place what the light prefers, in essence what God wishes, way over what they desire, what they would choose to achieve. Thus the temple also becomes a very good sounding board to what we're doing at the time. Being a temple society, many people take their training at the temple, and many people spend time at the temple, not just those who end up becoming priests and priestesses, but those who are going into other walks of life, that they need a greater understanding of the human psychic, greater understanding of spirit to achieve their job as it should be done. Which brings us to, let's go through, for instance, a life of what it would be like for someone living in Telos, starting with their conception or childbirth. In Telos, as soon as a woman realizes that she is pregnant, she immediately goes to the temple, and she's put in a room that gives nothing but beautiful pictures, music. She is constantly informed that she's beautiful, she's perfect, her child's beautiful, her child's perfect. So you might say the very first cells of this child's conception is filled with beauty, with light, with perfection. And that is their building blocks. There's where they start. Just as they are starting to understand that emotions and such go right into a child's cells. For instance, they're starting to understand that a child whom had parents that were constantly arguing during their conception and ingestion period, the child grows up insecure, quite often argumentative, or they will grow up totally feeling not good enough, totally feeling that they're not wanted. It's been proven that children that have constantly heard from their parents before they were even born that I didn't want this child, whatever, that child will constantly grow into I'm not good enough. So we start children off on the right foot immediately by continually enforcing that they are good enough, they're beautiful. A mother and a father, because a child has a psychic bond to both. Immediately start talking to the child. Start telling it how perfect it is. They spend lots of time viewing things that are beautiful. They spend lots of time singing to each other, playing little funny games, in essence going through a honeymoon again. So the child is all part of that joy. Another thing that makes the childbirthing process very different is we have a process that speeds it up. Therefore, a woman only carries a child for 3 months. In many ways, this is what the human condition was meant to be. Most human females on other planets do only carry a child for 3 months. That is why that a 3-month fetus is basically formed. All it does for men is grow. In the speeded up process, it is actually completed even sooner and just grows. So a 3-month baby, of course, will not be as large as a 9-month baby, but it will be, in the speeded up process, more than large enough to support itself on its own. But we are trying to return back to the time that we don't even need the speeded up process, and the whole pregnancy process returns to only being a 3-month process. Also returning to that place, women have much, much easier childbirth, as you can, I'm sure, understand. Another thing that we do constantly in childbirth is that all our births are underwater. We have found that underwater births bring the greatest ease to both the parent and the child. When a woman goes into labor, she immediately gets a birthing priestess, and then they go to a tub in one of the birthing sections of the temple. And the tub is filled with body temperature water. And the birthing priestess puts the mother in a slight hypnotic state. In this hypnotic state, she is in nowhere even resembling a trance, but she is simply told that there will be no pain. This suggestion, as well as the underwater births, creates a comfortable environment, and most women never have any pain whatsoever. They simply feel the pressure. In an underwater birth, as many women are starting to discover now, that when they are in water during labor, that would be labor pains simply feels like pressure. So more and more we are trying to alert women to this phenomenon. That is pain on dry land is simply pressure underwater. This serves a second purpose. The child, when then born, is not brought from one environment into shock tactics, as it is much on the surface now. When a child is born, they are immediately pulled from a warm, comfortable, wet environment into a cold, dry one with bright lights. And in the old days, they even used to slap them, which immediately brought a human being, for those of you who now have dealt with rebirthing, into the idea that life is hard, life hurts, life is painful. Thus, infants start shutting down from the time of their birth, and they just continue to shut down, thus not ever achieving the spiritual and physical levels that they could achieve, because they've already decided that life hurts too much to be fully there. In an underwater birth, a child goes from a warm environment right into a tub of warm water, and is immediately cuddled by both parents whom get in the tub with the birthing priestess. And the child's cuddled and petted underneath the water, so it immediately knows that its parents are there for it. Therefore, it does not go into insecurity. From there, a child of its own will come to the surface and take a quick breath, and then dive down again and breathe from the umbilical cord, and then come to the surface on their own again and take a deep breath. This also expands the lungs slowly. The child can actually breathe for as much as a half hour on the umbilical cord from whence it is born. This quick breath does not cause the pain and the tissue. Some of the tissue is actually damaged quite often in births that are not in water, because a child is forced to come and take a deep, deep breath out of cold, painful air that forces these lung sacs to immediately expand and create great pain, sometimes even creating scar tissue, which makes the adult more susceptible to things like tuberculosis, emphysema, colic, many of the other lung disorders that are very, very prevalent. And it also keeps the person, even as an adult, from breathing deeply as their normal state. Thus they are always half alive because they're only half breathing. Then, when the child has reached the point that they are breathing completely, just the air, the umbilical cord is cut with a laser, which causes a very fast, painless cut. And of course the umbilical cord has quit pulsating. From their birth, a child is immediately assigned 12 sets of godparents. These godparents give a child a chance to interact with more than just their birth family. True, they spend most of their time with their birth family, but also spending a little time here and there with each of their godparents as they grow up. It gives them a true sense of community and the brotherhood of man, rather than them and us. So the child immediately starts looking at the whole world as their family, instead of becoming very, very narrow and personalized. This also keeps families from developing little cliques that in the long run become quite detrimental to a developing soul, where you're saying, well, we just do things because my grandparents did it, my great-grandparents, and my great-great-grandparents, and so on, which quite often produces thought patterns within a family that can be quite detrimental to the development of the soul. By having 12 sets of godparents that the children spend time with, plus the fact the child's parents are usually godparents to at least a couple of children, bringing other children to spend time with them. That way, too, as I said, it continually creates the sense of community. It constantly creates the sense of oneness. The old saying that is, if you wanted to stop prejudice, then you would immediately send the person to go live with that they have been prejudiced with, and they'll soon find out we're all just human. From there, as child prepares for their education, within the educational process in Telos, children start their first education at about the time they're 3 years old, very much like your nursery school, except it is based on the fact of the intelligence of a human being rather than the stupidity. Thus, while children are very, very clear, sometimes clearer at 3 years old than they are at 5 or 6, making it easier, as many of you are starting to discover, of infants doing algebra, young children learning mathematics very, very early, learning to read very, very early. Where it is 3, sometimes even earlier, is when children are taught these things, as well as playing. They're also taught the rudimentaries of mathematics. They're also taught to read. They're taught to understand abstract concepts. They're taught to think, to understand how things work. I mean, we've all gone through the children period of the why and why not, and the period when children with the why stage, where everything you answer is a why or a how. We've learned to take that period, and instead of just saying, after being asked why on 14 questions, the parents quite often just flip out, and the next thing they know, they're telling their child to shut up. But if the society is set up that when children are in the why stage, they're already starting instruction, then that's used. The whys are being answered by professionals, and our professionals are more often than not priests and priestesses of the temple. There are those whom are strictly teachers, but most teachers have gone through a full temple training. The purpose of that is that they're not only feeding the mind, but to help feed the soul, the spirit, the understanding of what we're really here for, not just calculations and words. Within this setup, is that children start schooling at a much earlier period. As they move through their schooling process, we have learned that it is very, very acceptable and very important that a child, as well as being taught mathematics, science, spelling, grammar, literature, all the most common subjects in schooling, we find that it's just as important that they learn to meditate. It's just as important that they learn to dance. Just as important that they learn sports. Just as important they learn how to sing. Just as important that they learn how to act. What I mean by act is that we've got 5-year-olds already writing and putting on their own plays that relate to 5-year-old problems and the 5-year-old way of looking at life, which can be quite humorous for adults. But they're already being allowed to express. And even the learning, the strict learning process, is complemented with play. In this playing and learning through play, and playing to learn concept, children are allowed to totally express themselves in such a way that is acceptable. So many times, children that are just buzzing to express themselves one way or another get in a lot of trouble because they don't have quite a few avenues to express themselves through, or the avenues that they have been given include things like violence. Next thing you know, you've got a whole group of kids in the backyard playing Rambo, and they bring it right into the house. They start breaking things, and the parents wonder what's wrong with their kids. But in a process that allows them to express themselves, get out their extra energy, and learn at the same time, I might say the children are happier, the parents are happier, everyone's happier about it.